We need to talk about what you did to my mother." Richard's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He laid down his cards carefully. "Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me, family matter." The other men filed out, leaving behind their drinks and their curiosity. Richard gestured to an empty chair. "I was wondering how long it would take you to put it together." The medication, the specific instructions about her care, Caroline managing everything personally. It was never about guilt or making amends, was it? It was about control. Richard poured himself another scotch, his movements deliberate. "Your mother was a problem that needed managing. She knew too much about the bank's creative accounting practices. James had been careless, leaving documents where she could find them. When she threatened to go to the authorities, 'You poisoned her!' Maya's voice shook with rage. "You've been slowly poisoning her for 25 years. "Technically, we've been treating her," Richard corrected, as if discussing the weather. "A carefully calibrated combination of drugs, enough to affect her memory, her cognitive function. Caroline managed the dosage personally. Your mother's genetic predisposition to early-onset Alzheimer's made it all very believable. Maya felt the world tilting on its axis. Why tell me this now? Because, my dear, you're about to make a choice." Richard reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. "In here are the original documents, proof of everything the bank did, everything we did to cover it up, including your mother's treatment plan." He placed it on the table between them. "Take it to the authorities, and you'll bring down one of the oldest financial institutions in Boston. You'll destroy your father, your sister's future, and with it the guarantee of your mother's care. Or you accept that some truths are better left buried. Your mother receives the best care money can buy. You take your place in the family, with all the privilege and power that entails. Elizabeth never needs to know the role her mother played in all this, and life goes on." Maya stared at the envelope, her mother's voice echoing in her head. Original documents. Even in her damaged state, Lisa Chen had been trying to tell her the truth. "You're a monster," she whispered. Richard smiled thinly. "I'm a pragmatist. The world runs on pragmatism, Maya, not justice. You've seen enough of our world by now to understand that." Maya reached for the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was everything she'd need to expose decades of corruption, to finally get justice